Hi there, welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. This is your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do, and where we also believe that you have power in the state that you create. We're going to get into all of that, and this is actually a really vulnerable episode because it's less long ago, if you know what I mean. On the podcast, right, we have been going through the stories that happened to us, like 25 years ago. And the story that we're sharing today is a little more current. And I think the more current our story is, the more vulnerable it is, right? Before I explain anymore, I want to really invite you to the free mini course that I'm doing on October 3rd and 4th. It's called Learning to Use the Power of Your Heart. And it is going to unlock in your mind ways of understanding the power that you already have inside of you, that all you have to learn how to do is how to wake it up and how to use it, and how much expansiveness that can bring in your life. The tool that it can be to help you create the state that you're in, which is a lot of what we're diving into today. It has incredible power to be able to drop into intuition and to help assist you with the state that your vibration is in. It has the natural ability to bring a lot of incredible benefits into your life, including resetting the chemical patterns that actually happen in your body, which create the way that you feel on a day-to-day basis. So I will be kind of at least allowing your mind to grasp everything that your heart can do. A little glimpse of it. You know, last winter when I became a registered heart math technician, I was drinking that information. And this will just be a little glimpse at that, to be able to see how much power your heart has, like that you have right now in your body, that you don't know, most likely, how to use. So we'd love for you to join us for this course. Like I said, it's free, it's mini, it's not long, and if you happen to miss it, there will be replays. So get signed up. I'll put a link in the show notes and you can sign up and get it in your calendar. All right, moving into today's episode, you know that season 1 is me telling my story. Season 2 is Jake telling his story. And right now in this episode, we're telling a more current version of Jake's story. And the reason why is because it ties into the topic of everything we've been talking about around Chase. Losing Chase to suicide was detrimental. It was a really hard thing to experience. And because we have so many different angles involved in this, we are trying to cover it from a few different angles. And because we've been through it ourselves, we know that also sharing our personal story with you has a lot of power. And so we're diving into it. We're diving into everything that went on for Jake to be able to be in this state and what it was like for me when we were in it. So this today is actually, we didn't even plan this before we were recording it, but it's part 1 of a part 2 story. So we'll share the part 2 with you next week. And this is part 1, helping you understand and kind of get the foundation of what was happening in our life. Let's jump in. Hi, Jake.
Hi.
I'm glad you're here.
It's fun to be here.
It's kind of a big episode.
It's a long time in the making.
We're going to jump right in. And I'm just going to ask you, because we have a lot to share and a lot to go through and a lot to go over. It's all good and beautiful information. But there was a big part of some of the recent episodes that we've been doing around suicide. There's a big part that we haven't really talked about and haven't dove into appropriately. And I think we have a lot to offer in the arena with this. So in episode 23, you say some things like this. A few years ago, my family almost lost me. A series of unfortunate events and circumstances that completely altered my brain and personality. I was no longer me. You talk about anxiety and stress and sort of the wake-up call that we had in our relationship. So I want to start off just by asking you to bring us up to speed to what that was and help us get a little bit of a glimpse of why we were in the space that we were in. What was the circumstance?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Because that's a 12 or 14 year period from beginning to end. In the mid 2000s was this amazing period of time where we had just moved to Las Vegas from the Phoenix area. And it was right before the real estate market took off. And Vegas was one of those areas that was kind of the front runner for other areas to also take off. So it was just kind of like the luck of the draw, that we moved there and we're already starting to dabble in real estate and do some things with that. We had done very well, even to the point where there was a lot of equity in things and we were being very aggressive. We were pulling money out of houses, with home equity lines of credit. We were investing in some very speculative projects. There was at least the 3 that we were a part of. And for me, my logic was, hey, if any one of these 3 were to be successful, it would be amazing for us. It would actually set us up for the rest of our life. So there was so much optimism, and even in Las Vegas at the time, we lived in an area where there were so many couples a similar demographic to us with young kids, and they were entrepreneurs and thriving, and then you fast forward to what happened since the mid 2000s, and everything collapses, and then all of a sudden we realize we're upside down in houses, and some of the things that we had invested in, they were very stressful, where it's like we actually were, to meet the demands, the financial needs for one of the projects in particular. Now we're actually partnered with a person and maxing out credit cards. We had this amazing credit at the time and had a significant amount of credit available to us by credit cards. And so we just, we made so many poor decisions, and that was really on me.
Well, I think first of all, to pause you and just kind of say, I think that the mindset that we had when we made money so fast and easy in those beginning years. And I think that a lot of people who were, living during that time might also, and when I say living, I mean like an adult during that time providing for their family. I think that they would agree that it maybe felt like that. And maybe they made different decisions prior to going into 2008 when everything kind of crashed and was really hard.
Yeah.
So I think our story in this regard really mirrors what a lot of people went through.
Right. And you even look at the business partner that I had at the time who was much older than us, and, part of his argument was, hey, look, you're young enough that even if you were to lose everything, with this deal, you'll have enough time to rebuild. Even if you had to file a bankruptcy, it's just like you'll be able to, to bounce right back, and
we believed him.
Yeah.
Young and dumb.
Yeah, we believed him, and then, it seemed like anything that could go wrong with that investment did go wrong, and then, one of the other investments was this condo conversion project down in San Diego, and the timing of the real estate market, all of a sudden it basically wiped out that one, and then the other one that started as this energy and infrastructure project, that was supposed to be so amazing, it kind of kept morphing into different things. And not only did that one go wrong, that one turned into a securities fraud lawsuit, and the state of Utah initially thought that I was one of the principals involved in the deal, meaning that they thought that I was like an actual owner, a decision maker, and so you look at everything else that's going on right now, we're now upside down on properties. We're now not making any income. You had been a loan officer for many years and had stopped doing that, and everything I was doing was touching these investments and real estate. And now it's the horrible timing for that, because everything's collapsed and we're behind on our mortgage, and I'm stressed about what's going on with these credit cards, and we have this feeling that we're just supposed to move from Las Vegas to Southern Utah, which is the St. George community. And that's what we did. And we kind of had to just start over here, and while I'm still hopeful that something still might happen with the 2 remaining projects, but ever since the initial investment that we made, that even came from, the equity out of our properties, and then the credit cards, that then became involved. It's like I would go to bed stressed about that. I would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night stressed about it. If I didn't do that, for sure, when I woke up in the morning, like that's the first thing that's on my mind. It's like, I wonder what's going on with the investment today. Let me just check in and see, And so it was just, I just had this nervousness or this anxiety, that entire time, And so then as you keep fast forwarding through our timeline, nothing's able to come about with these investments, and there's this element of I'm kind of twiddling my thumbs. I'm kind of keeping other people that are involved informed, and I feel this pressure to just like help everybody be in the know, because there was a few people I had referred to some of these deals, and it was stressful that we, the way that we had to move, we moved literally 2 weeks before our house would have sold at the courthouse steps with a foreclosure.
So we were able to short sell it, but it was a very nerve-wracking experience. And so something to point out is the brain patterns that are starting to develop, because this is just the beginning of the story. This is the beginning, and it becomes years, right? And we've got little kids, and we end up having one more. So now we have 2 when we moved from Vegas to St. George, and now we have 3, and we're just trying to make it. And we had a lot of beliefs that were producing results that weren't really working out for us. And at the time, gosh, don't you wish you had like a really great mentor? I mean, we learned the things, and we're still learning like we all are. But at the time, it would have been so cool to have someone there, walking us through it. And so let's fast forward to the investments are not going well. And then eventually you do end up working for a mortgage company, and things actually do start to go well. And then the bomb drops, like a true bomb. Just drops. Yeah,
it was we had gone from basically losing everything and starting over to now we've built back up savings. We had been a 1 vehicle family for a little while there. Sometimes we were able to borrow like a family member's vehicle to have a second vehicle. And so now we had this cash, like, $10,000, $12,000 something. And we're already starting to figure out like what is going to be the new second vehicle that we can
test
finally get.
Cars.
Yep.
We were
and
so
so we're
excited.
And so we're just narrowing it down, and then all of a sudden I'm at an annual, soccer coaches meeting, because I coach club soccer for kids, and I get the text from Misha, and it basically says that there's 3 U.S. Marshals at our front door that want to talk to me. And my heart just sinks while I'm in that meeting. I'm sitting there, I'm staring. I think I had a BlackBerry phone at the time, and I knew what it was regarding, because the state of Utah had already been in touch with me saying like, hey, tell us more about what's happened with this investment. So I was just fully cooperative, just giving them all the information they wanted to know. And I had no idea that at the time they're actually, building this case that would involve me.
Here's a little piece of advice. Don't ever talk to, like, Jake is very kind and honest and actually quite naive or innocent to something of someone pursuing him criminally. What? And so he willingly cooperated, gave all kinds of information, stuff that he never, ever, ever should have given.
Without just having an attorney to just say, hey, help us see what we should do here.
Yeah, what are you really trying to do? Because they wouldn't have been able to nail him without his own information that he gave them. And again, like, it was like, I mean, imagine whatever it is that you do for work. Just imagine people knocking on your door with guns and saying, prove to us that you're doing this the right way. Whatever it is. Prove to us that you're an honest dentist. Prove to us that, like, that to me was just like so assaulting because I know Jake and I know the whole situation, you know, where they were coming at us like we had received the invested funds and spent them. And that those were in our charge, and they never were, which to me still baffles me to this day.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that still baffles us, you know, but at that point in time, you know, it's crazy because, you know, I came home and they were still waiting for me, you know, because you told them, like, you weren't going to tell them, the U.S. Marshals, where I was.
Yeah. They wanted to know where he was.
Because they were going to show up to this meeting with 20 other people there and try.
Like, he's an honest guy. He's not going to run from you. You have questions for him. Just wait for him.
So I get home late at night, you know, and I see their parked car, you know, right there at our next door neighbor's house, you know, so they could see me as I'd be coming down the street. And yeah, and they come up to me with their hands, you know, on their guns, you know, like I'm some kind of crazy flight risk. And all of a sudden it turns into, you know, I basically am arrested. I go into the county jail. The next thing we know, when all is said and done the next day, it's like, wow, all the money that we were going to spend on this
new car,
this second vehicle for our family that we were so excited about, it all had to be used to pay the bail, you know, system. And so we lost all that, you know, and then this turned into a 4-year process that was so stretched out. And it was so stressful because, one, it was so costly. You know, we were starting to do very well financially, but then all of our excess was going towards paying, you know, 5-figure attorney fees each month.
It was really hard. It was really hard to just turn all of that over when we finally started, like, really being on our feet.
Yeah, and so then for it to carry on for 4 years to suddenly, it's a whole separate story, but to have this amazing, you know, favorable result at the end that helped avoid anything criminal in nature, because the risk is that with me being a licensed mortgage loan officer, if certain things would have happened, it would have negated me from being able to stay in that industry. And so now it was risking our livelihood there. And so for 4 years, it was difficulty falling asleep. And then I would wake up in the middle of the night with completely panicked. You know, I'd have these panic attacks where my heart would just start racing so quickly. I mean, you had times, remember what, you'd even feel it through remember that? She could feel my heart beating, vibrating through the bed, through the sheets. You know, it was beating so fast, and then it'd take a lot of work just to get back to sleep. And then when I'd wake up, it would be, you know, the very first thing that I would worry about and stress about. And I had no idea that during all of this time, and then other things that happened after that it was just causing my brain to completely change, you know, and alter. And it hasn't been until the recent years that we've discovered the science behind what actually happens to your brain when you sit in that for so long and don't do anything about it.
I like the way you said that. We're going to get into all of that part today with how long we sit in the things that are on our plate, because that's a huge part of our choice. And it's hard because you're no doubt in the middle of a lot. And not only all of that, but you were learning that the people you were involved with were trying to throw you under the bus. I mean, this was just,
I remember,
it was terrible.
You know, was it either the day of or the day, maybe like the first Monday out, because this all happened on a Friday. Was it a Friday night?
Yeah, on purpose.
Yeah. And so then it was on Monday that we were together and, you know, and sitting in the shade, you know, in our car.
We were ready. We were getting ready to go worship, and You were reading through some documents.
Well, I think we were even able to listen to, we were listening to like a CD, like an audio clip of whatever the person that we had invested our money with, what he said to the investigators. And it was completely throwing me under the bus, you know, and it
Like
was,
trying to put Jake in the place that the guy should have been in. He was really placing all the blame on Jake when Jake, for the first time, was seeing this guy's bank statements and seeing some of the decisions that he made with some of the funds that had come in, and it was heartbreaking.
we basically saw the proof of how he was fraudulently using the funds.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and then to hear, and then to see in writing things that were a part of the investigation where he's thrown me under the bus. It was just, it was just so shocking, but also I was so heartbroken.
Yeah.
In that moment, because oh man.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe that somebody would go to those lengths.
Yeah.
To say those things or to do those things and to have it backfire on us.
Yeah.
The way that it did.
And you know, the thing that was so hard is going to the attorneys and saying, hey, this is the way that it really was. And everything we said, they were like, you can't say that. You can't say that. Don't say that. And we were like, what?
How do you ever really tell the whole story or the actual truth and all the facts?
If you say that, they could spin it like this. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the world that we're in? Like, oh, so hard. So yeah, 4 years of that. And then coming out of that, it was actually super redeeming for sure. At the end, when they finally, it was like in the beginning, there was a new prosecuting attorney. There was a new prosecuting attorney that really wanted the credit of
nailing someone to the wall.
For their very first.
Well, there was the same thing with this girl, Nadia, who was the state investigator. She was brand new. And so the way that she was doing all her research and due diligence on everything and everybody. And I spoke to her multiple times, you know, and again, I was just trying to be as cooperative as possible with all of this, thinking like, you know, I got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to just help them do whatever they got to do. Like I was the first to invest, you know, in previous years as this project carried on, and we were even the very last people to invest.
Yeah.
You know, when we were like, maybe this money will finally be the tipping point to get this project off the ground, and then some of the people we've referred to this project, you know, will all win. You know, in the end.
But then at the very end, when it finally shook out and they could see what it really was,
the state prosecuting attorney was switched to somebody else.
Yeah. And the main guy had passed away.
Yeah.
He got cancer, passed away during those 4 years. It's terrible. But
there's
anyway,
elements of that story that are going to be so great to share in the future. Because I mean, we experienced some miracles and some amazing things that happened.
Right.
You know, to give us the favorable result that we were looking for, like all things considered.
For sure.
But then I was going to say, but then the bummer is that, you know, we had already spent an exorbitant amount of money to fight this thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then we were still behind on
close to $100,000.
Yeah. And then we were still behind, you know, like on another almost $40,000 in attorney fees. And so it got to the point where now everything from Vegas, because now it's approaching 7 years since we first started using the credit cards in Vegas. And now they have like their statute of limitations where they can come after you within up to 7 years.
Right.
So then there were things happening there where now they're threatening.
Right. So now we're just
garnishments, and it just was escalating.
Right. So now we're just moving into, let's file a bankruptcy.
And we actually had no choice but to, because it was getting so bad. Because the garnishments that could have happened from the creditors issuing a judgment before that 7-year cutoff, it completely would have
not a good idea.
Yeah.
So we file a bankruptcy. We make too much money to file a chapter, 7, whatever they were.
7. One.
So we
one
file
of them is a payment plan related. If you make too much money, then you have to be on a payment plan.
Right. So we file that kind of a bankruptcy, and we go into that for a couple of years.
It's like a year and a half into it.
Year and a half into it. And then the market changes and we're not making.
I'm in the mortgage business
right.
at this time.
Right.
You know, and so then everything shifts when rates had completely spiked, and it kind of caused us to no longer be able to do the things that we were doing with some of these refinance activities. So then all of a sudden my income completely dropped.
So then now we're not able to make this really huge bankruptcy payment.
It's like $800 a month, I think.
Was that it?
Yeah, 800, 900.
It felt big.
It was less than 1,000, but yeah, it was pretty high.
So we need to refile. And
so,
this is like
seriously, like the mental and emotional anguish of already having to do the first one,
right?
And then getting a year and a half into it, and then having to
guys. But there are some serious patterns that are developing in the story. Okay, patterns around what's happening inside of our brain, the feelings that are being fed, and the way that we are becoming addicted to these hormones that are negative feelings, and bad patterns that are happening with money. And belief around money and scarcity and not having enough and all kinds of really, really crazy things that we're now just on the other side of having, trying to figure all of this out. So we're filing this next bankruptcy. And as we're filing this bankruptcy, they are wanting us to be at like $0, right? Like you need to file and have like no money in your name. And my kids had like earned all of this money. And I was like, well, I'm not giving our kids money to the bankruptcy court. And the rule was that you could only keep that money if they could prove that they had earned it from an outside source. And that wasn't something that we could prove. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm going to be a rebel. I have some money that I've tucked away in our closet, and I'm not going to turn it all over. And so I decided that was the most wise thing.
Well, it kind of felt like the spirit of the law would say, hey, you deserve to be able to hang on to your kids' money that they legitimately earned
and worked hard
doing different things.
And they've been saving for, whatever, a car and different things.
But the letter of the law.
Right. So we filed that bankruptcy. And then like the night we filed that bankruptcy, I suddenly have a hole in my stomach that's bigger than, any black hole. It was crazy. I began to torture myself for a solid 24 hours. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. It was terrible. It was like the worst feeling I had ever had. And I remember you and I were in the bathroom and we were pacing, and I was kind of having this conversation with you, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do that. Like, we've lied, and I can't do that. And I was like, it's just not right. And so we decided that we needed to give all of that money, you guys, to the bankruptcy court. So we do.
And what was this? You realized you had other money, like you would sometimes just keep cash in different places. And you discovered that there was even like more money.
Yeah. It was a big deal.
Stuffed away somewhere. And then you knew we had to give away that as well.
Well, it just became this. It became like, okay, so this was the amount. And then we had decided together that we were going to turn that in. And then, do you remember we were eating dinner the next night, and I looked at you and you looked at me, and I said, the green bag.
You said it like in a panicked way too. Like
totally. Because I remembered that I had a bunch of money stashed in this bag. And this is part of the patterns that we develop in our brain, you guys, because we were so messed up in this arena with the way that money was going that I put money in one of our travel bags in case if we were ever gone somewhere and couldn't have access to money for some reason. Like, we didn't have credit cards at the time. It was just we were really, really in a volatile situation. And so I looked in your face and I was like, oh my gosh, the green bag. And I went and opened the green bag, and I would just check all these places that I used to just hide money. And we found money. Like, we just kept finding money. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table counting out all that cash so that I could call our attorney and say, hey, I don't even remember how much we ended up having. Hey, we have $6,000. We got to turn over to the bankruptcy court. Whatever it was. I don't even know.
Yeah,
That's totally a
it was
guess.
Yeah, it was
Was
like
it close?
5 or 6. And the bummer is that like had we known that it was there, there's ways that you can pre-buy clothing and pre-buy food. Like you can already
prepay your rent. You
Yeah,
can
you
prepay
could.
all your bills.
It could have completely gone to things that we otherwise still had to just put money towards.
Yeah, so you get the exhaustion from it. But the point is that for 3 days, I had that pit in my stomach until we made it right. I had an overwhelming, like, torturous sleep and dreams, and I just couldn't. It was terrible. Because I looked at Jake. We were driving after we had turned in the money, or maybe the day after, whatever it was. I remember we were driving. I remember where we were at. And I said to you, oh my gosh, like, what a relief. It feels so good to do the right thing, you know? And I said, I am so happy that that feeling of anxiety has left me. And you said something to me that was pivotal. You remember what you said?
I mean, it was something along the lines of, like, for me, that never goes away.
Yeah. And when I had a glimpse of what you were experiencing, you know, my life, I feel like, was a little different because I was raising the kids and I was happy and I was like putting, you know, taking them to the library and teaching them everything I could and putting my heart and soul into them. And like your job was to like figure it out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well,
that's still our job, but
it's what we had decided, you know, and
yeah,
we had every reason to think that all of my efforts were moving things forward in a way to, you know, to where I could be the provider and you could do things within the home as we wanted to.
But it was a little too much on the heels of the patterns that had been learned. Mm-hmm. It was too much.
You know, I was even like trying to explain to you, I may have even used the words like or phrasing that it seems like that on a molecular level that I'm constantly just vibrating with this anxiety type of feeling where it wouldn't be like you could look at someone and see their hands shaking in the traditional sense, but it feels like my entire being is constantly just shaking with this nervousness or this anxiety. Yeah. And that this was going on for years and years and completely impacted how I felt each day, how I interacted. Your
ability to function?
Yeah. I mean, because this is when I started, at this point is when I'm explaining to you that even I didn't know the word brain fog. I was describing it in a different way, but brain fog is, you know, something that's commonly used with, you know, with talking about the mental state that people get in.
Ultimately, you had an hour we had determined where you were actually able to function and get work done during the day.
Yeah, I'd go into the office and it would be like no more than 2 hours.
And then the rest of the day was, I'm supposed to be at my desk and being functioning, but I'm not.
Or I am at my desk and it's just not coming.
Torture.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, one of the things that, you know, would be the very best advice is give everything you have and walk away from it and go do something that feels amazing. Mm-hmm. So we'll get into all of the ins and outs around that. But ultimately, just totally understanding where you were at and what we were up against.
I mean, was it at this point that I was even just explaining, you know, that I am constantly just thinking about suicide. I mean, I'm even picturing in my head, like, if I chose to end my life this way, how would I do it so that it wouldn't be such a disaster or such a mess because of what I know. Because I know what my own dad went through, having to find Chase, and how awful the scene was for him. Yeah. And then it gave him nightmares for a long time. Yeah. And it still affects him today, you know. And so it's like, so my thoughts at the time were that, you know, I struggled to think if I really would do this, but I was still so plagued by the thoughts all the time. Yeah. And what it might look like, how I might do it.
Mm-hmm. And Kurt was a big part of our story, our friend Kurt.
Yeah. So we have our friends Holly and Kurt that live in Las Vegas, and Kurt died by suicide, and we didn't know that he had struggled so severely with depression since he was even like a late teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And even with all these measures that they were taking, you know, to keep him with them. I mean, it was even like a family collaborative effort
to be with him at all the times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and Kurt was aware of this. You know, it's like this constant family suicide watch where someone always had to be with him. And eventually had this, you know, this way of being able to subtly say like he was just going to be leaving from their house and go straight to the other house where the person there was now supposed to be with him. And between one location and the next, that, you know, the tragedy happened. Mm-hmm. And that was an entire wake-up call.
Yeah, I think
Huge
that
wake-up call
that shook us big time because our kids are the same age. We're the same age.
Kids were friends in Vegas.
Mm-hmm. You had been, it was
same friend groups. Mm-hmm. No idea that Kurt was struggling like he was.
And to be able to witness the pain of everything that happened afterwards, I think was a wake-up call for you.
Yes.
Yeah, it was amazing. So at the time, I had made all the appointments for Jake to get the help that he needed. And I got an email from Dr. Gabby. And Gabby I had sent her an email a year previous about different mental conditions and is there any food that, you know, helps to be able to reset sort of these mental conditions. And she sent me an email, said, "Hey, doll, do you still want to know about, you know, food that can help with depression and anxiety?" And I was like, you are kidding me that I'm getting this email right now. Because I had sent it to an old email a year previous. And so she checked the email a year later and sent me that email. Well, then lo and behold, it wasn't for someone else. It was for my own husband that I needed the information for. She taught us a lot of amazing things about nutrition and about supplements that Jake could take. And before you even were able to get into the psychiatrist to actually be prescribed the medications, because you were working with a therapist, right?
No, I already had whatever prescription and so I had that prescription.
Oh, you just didn't fill it.
And then we had,
okay,
you know, Gabby's feedback. So it was suddenly conflicting with which way do I go? Like, do I actually kind of go this route and at least try some of these things that she's encouraging me to do before I would fill this prescription? And we chose to do that, you know, and that included, I mean, if there was ever, you know, eating organically has kind of become this loose phrase or term, you know, in the world that we're in right now. But this was like true organic eating that we had switched to for this window of time. And at the same time, I'm taking these particular, you know, natural supplements that she's recommending. And the results were amazing overnight. I mean, it was within like, I think it was it the second day that I was already falling asleep and sleeping soundly through the night. And I hadn't experienced that for years.
Right. That is one of the biggest signs, is that if you're not sleeping or your loved one isn't sleeping, something has to change immediately. So whatever it is, you know, whatever. And Jake and I we're only partial to the things that we did because they worked for us, right? Like, do whatever works for you. The nutrition, the supplements that we took, we did a bunch of YouTube videos like a few years ago. So they're kind of old, but if you're really interested in it, you can go listen to those. We're not here today to educate you on all that stuff because the idea is just that you can get help. We took all the glyphosates out of our diet, which is the main chemical in Roundup.
It's in so much of our food. When you really break it down, it is.
It's making us sick mentally. It's making our bodies sick in lots of other ways. And so if you do some research on it, then you will learn a whole gamut of things. But the thing that I've learned now is that actually, if you're then approaching your food from a very scared standpoint and you have a low vibration of fear, you're actually bringing that into your life on a deeper level, and that will lower your immune system and all of the functionalities of your body to then be so altered on a vibrational level. Because what we're doing, what we're really doing is that everything that we do involves our vibration. And if we can bring our vibration up, whether it's through nutrition or supplements or whatever the case of the thing that we're choosing, the vehicle, right? If we're choosing that vehicle and that vehicle makes us feel bad and makes us feel fearful, we're not helping ourselves. So that's a good measure of something that you can kind of always be thinking, is that what you're doing, you want to actually feel good about. So ultimately, within 2 weeks, you went into your appointment and they were like, what did you do? What did you do? And ultimately, what we did was he took the glyphosates out of his diet. He was eating whole foods. If God made it, eat it. If he didn't, don't. We were eating grains and beans. We were eating meat sparingly. He was taking Serenogen, and he was taking...
a natural supplement, like a Chinese herb, basically.
And you were taking deep rest. So those were, and that's a sleeping, helps you stay asleep.
Yeah, and when I went to that appointment, they do these tests a certain way that can score you on how you're doing. And when your score is, above a certain amount, that suggests that you need to actually be in therapy or counseling. When you can drop below a certain amount, that's when, you don't need to be, and there's like this middle ground, like where maybe you do or maybe you don't. And so my scores had completely plummeted, which was this amazing thing. And they even do this, they're weighing me at each of these appointments, and then my weight had dropped significantly. So it was just a side note, like a byproduct of the way that we were eating for mental health reasons. I was actually dropping all this weight. And then even that was making me feel even that much better, about myself, or, for the ways that I was taking care of my body and starting to see these results. So things just started to be on the up and up with all of these steps. And so it was only 2-3 appointments into what we thought was going to be a long series of counseling, in this therapy program. And I was already doing well enough that I no longer needed to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. So a pretty phenomenal shift. We kept the food side up, and you took Serenogen for quite a while. I think you took Serenogen for like a year. We kept the food up for 2 years, and then we're really, really great at it for almost 3. And we still eat that way when it's in our control, but we don't limit ourselves of like going out and eating with friends or anything like that. We just know it's a better way.
This entire process we went through that completely helped my mental state revert back to where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And then it's been the recent couple years, as you've been able to dive into these studies and all this amazing information that's out there, that now we realize the science of the brain behind everything that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I even remember back when we were in the thick of getting this all sorted out, and it was causing us to really just dive into a lot of statistics and just understanding things. And I just remember being so alarmed at these statistics, where you look at, depending on some of these categories, and, mental health is still this broad term, but it was saying how, depending on the source, it's basically saying that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 is struggling with mental health per all this list of things here. So then when we actually looked at that and realized, like, wow, we know so many families that are a family of 4 or a family of 5 or a family of 6, and to think that we're just constantly rubbing shoulders with people that are struggling in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of people that we know that, like, maybe they're a couple and we know what's going on with, with their kids to a certain extent. And then you realize, like, wow, out of their family of 4 or 5 or 6, like, this person and this person are struggling. And then we look at our own extended family and realize, wow, these statistics are pretty accurate.
Well, the thing that I feel like is the hardest part about the struggle is going through it without talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The silence, you and I know what's going on, but we didn't share a whole lot. I mean, I remember there was a day I called your dad and I said, you probably don't even know that I called your dad, but I called him and I said, I need you to call Jake. I need you to reach him out to him today, because I was so worried that day. I was so worried about the state that I knew you were in. And I said, I need you to call him. And, that was kind of not everybody knew. It's not like once this is happening, you raise a red flag outside your house. You just don't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's just like what we see today. Even you find out celebrities that you think have the most amazing life. Robin Williams, there's so many actually,
Mm-hmm.
and you have no idea that they are struggling like that. And so for my parents, they were so heartbroken for my sake to realize that
Mm-hmm.
that all these years, going on a 14-year window, that I was struggling so bad, and that outwardly I'm still trying to be, happy and pleasant, but still some of the signs are there, that all the times that I'm just sitting there, not really saying much, or just not
engaged.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Not engaged.
Yeah. That actually became, a big weight for me, because I felt like I was also trying to make everything still fine. But I knew that I was functioning with just the shell of a person for my husband. You didn't have it in you.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't know the things that we know now.
We even look back for so long. I was known among our couple friends as someone that it might be 10, 11 at night, and we're hanging out, we're talking, sitting on the couch, sitting on the floor, playing, and all of a sudden I'm completely falling asleep, or I end up taking this little power nap. But I was the guy that would just fall asleep.
Yeah, because you were just over it. You didn't have a lot to give.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where I was going with this is I was so spent mentally every day from...
You're literally beating yourself up in your mind. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to think about how it felt like something that was happening to you. For you.
Yeah.
In no part of this would you have thought back then that you had something to do with this.
Right.
And it's not very fair to tell someone who doesn't understand that it has everything to do with them. That's a hard, harsh reality to look to. But I think the best part about that, about it being a hard thing to see, is that once you realize that it has everything to do with you, that you actually can do something about it. The hardest part is not knowing what to do. Having the reality that it's you, and that you should be doing more to care for sort of your internal state. Because even if you think about it, even the food and everything, we're relying on outside sources. And we'll talk a lot about outside sources. But outside sources versus our inside source and our ability to feed ourselves from within is a game changer.
I would add to this that one of the things that's so interesting is that, in all the years previous, even in the early years of our marriage, in our early 20s, into, I guess, our mid 20s, there's a lot of amazing things that we were a part of, some amazing courses, that maybe, for lack of a better words, they're courses about, how to live an extraordinary life, or, ways that you can create your life. Even both of you and I were both salespeople at the time, so we're just constantly immersed in a lot of great content.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I look back after we had this success with changing our eating, and then the natural supplements, and just everything that was working so well, it caused me to realize, wow, I I actually had so much that I had learned in the past that if I even would have implemented some of those things, even though I can consider it inferior to additional things that we did or that we now know, like it was all right there within me to, to make this progress. I just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But now the hope for everybody listening is that they can understand that you may already have some tools that you're already aware of, but if you don't, like, let us be a resource. Let you be a resource to them, because what we've now discovered to just kind of have this whole gamut of all these different options and resources and tools, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so thrilled that you're doing what you're doing now, because it's like this representation of the best parts of you and everything that you've spent so much of your life diving into this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's when the person, Jake, you're my ride or die. When the person that's closest to you is struggling that much, you just use your own resources as much as you can to figure out, where do we go? How can we have power in this? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to talk about on the next episode. So stay tuned, my friends. This is a really big story. It's a lot of information at once, and I hope that you are benefiting. I hope that you're gaining some awareness about your own story, and I hope that you're really starting to see that we have so much power by the state we create, and how much choice we actually have in doing that. We'll keep getting into that in the episode next week. If this is a conversation that you're loving and you feel like it would benefit a friend, encouragement to share if it feels aligned for you. Also, don't forget to get signed up for the mini course that I'm teaching. It's free on October 3rd and 4th. It's called Learning to Use the Power of Your Heart. This will really walk you through what we have access to be able to contribute to situations like this. So the link is in the show notes, and I would love it if you want to join us for that. In closing, I just want to remind you of something that was really great and wise advice that I learned from my dad. And if you go back to the very night that I told my parents that I was pregnant when I was young, and their advice to me, remember when my dad said, "Hey, Mish, anyone who judges you or talks bad about you, or, right, that kind of has this thing, where they're talking off to the side or behind your back about you, don't pay any attention to them. They just haven't been through something hard yet." And he counseled me to pay attention to the people who had my back, who were in my corner, to focus on them, and just not to pay attention to the other people. And obviously I'm bringing that up to you now just to help you see that no matter what you're in the middle of, no matter what it is, there will always be people who actually do understand where you're at. And just remember to keep those people in your corner. Don't pay any mind to the people who, I love that quote that says, the people who mind don't matter and the people who matter don't mind. That's so beautiful. But truth is just stay in love and don't let other people who are going to judge you or anything like that be any of your business. All right, until next time, my friend.